Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit zweiggroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcasts, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting guru Mark Zweig and his team of experts straight talk in your ear. Mark has more than 30 years of experience helping AEP and environmental firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver his invaluable management, industry, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter and the Zweig Letter Podcasts let you develop professionally, wherever you are.
Hey folks, this is Randy Wilburn here with the Zweig Letter Podcast. I am so excited to be here today. I've got a new crop of podcast episodes coming your way over the next couple of weeks and months. And basically, I have hoodwinked and corralled a lot of my colleagues here at Zweig Group to take part in this podcast because it's so important for you guys to hear from everybody within the organization in terms of what we're doing in the industry, both for ourselves as well as for our clients. And so, I think it's very appropriate for us to give you as much information as possible. I know when I listen to podcasts, I like to listen to a variety of people and a variety of ideas to help formulate what I want to do and work on some of my skill sets and to improve myself in multiple ways. And obviously our goal here at Zweig Group, with our mission is that we exist to make you more successful, period, end of story. I believe these podcasts can help you do that, among many other things. We've got videos. We have a lot of material coming out. 2017 is going to be an amazing year. And I am, really honored to be kicking it off this year with a new member of the Zweig Group team that joined us back in May. And Keil is part of the M&A group. He works with Jamie Clare and Noah Hunt and just an outstanding group of people. And Philip, it's so glad to have you here on the podcast, first time out, and you're a good looking guy, man. I wish we could be doing a video, but that's okay. We'll get you on video in a future time. But I think the podcast is a great start. So thanks so much for agreeing to do this. I had to twist your arm a little bit, but no, I'm just kidding. But I'm just glad to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I'm really glad that I've got this opportunity to sit here and communicate in a different format with a lot of our clients and listeners here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I certainly, tell us a little bit about your background. I know something about your background, but why don't you tell the listening audience a little bit about your background and actually why you came to Zweig Group?
Yeah, and since this is kind of one of the first opportunities to really kind of delve into that for a lot of folks that haven't been introduced to me, I've written a few articles for the Zweig Letter, but haven't really gone in depth in what my background is and what brought me here. So to start, as Randy said, I am a consultant for the M&A services as well as the strategic planning group here at Zweig, and straight out of high school, joined the Air Force. So I was in the military for about 5 years. Great opportunity to travel the world. And later on in my military career, I got to train about 227 aircraft armament system technicians in the armament standardization wing there in North Carolina. So I wrote standards and policies for weapons standardization to ensure crew safety and identified trends there that might negatively impact flight operations. Okay. And so from there, I went back to school, got a degree in chemical engineering and a degree in physics, worked for various large-scale manufacturing companies, helped co-design a never attempted before rechargeable thermal battery that had applications in the oil industry, and worked as an improvement engineer, which is Dow Chemical's term for project manager, in one of their polyethylene or plastics plants. And they're actually going through a really interesting merger with DuPont at the moment. And so I'm watching that pretty closely. It's very interesting to have two such large scale companies trying to integrate cultures, and they're going to end up splitting into three separate entities by the time it's all said and done. So really interesting to watch. I encourage anyone to go out there if you're interested in M&A and kind of how that world works. Really interesting example going on there.
Yeah.
So finally returned to school to get my MBA and focused on entrepreneurship, innovation, and strategy were kind of the three reasons I wanted to get back to school, was to get a more solid background in that. So during my time there, I worked for a large coffee producer supplying Walmart, which is right in our backyard. So it's a big part of our life here day to day in Northwest Arkansas, but worked for their supply chain and sales strategies team and trying to formulate plans to help grow their business with Walmart.
Okay.
And so why Zweig? I love to learn is one of the things I love to do. And I always ask people what their why is. Why do you get up in the morning?
Right.
For me, the architecture and engineering industry provides so much value to society. It's such an important part of, what makes society function. And I want to help people grow their firms and operate in such a way that generates wealth for the entire country and the entire world. And one of the best ways I thought that I could do that is really getting into a consulting role to be able to have the greatest impact. I believe you have to learn and then do and then teach in order to really understand something. And so this position offers me that opportunity. And so Zweig Group is fantastic to keep a pulse on the entire industry while trying to help firms grow.
Well, man, I mean, that's a mouthful right there. You're giving me so much to work on, and I don't know where to start. I certainly do want to hear about the battery situation, because that sounds really interesting. And I remember you mentioning during one of our get-togethers that you were a chemical engineer, and I thought that was really interesting to see you that side of you. And so that's pretty exciting. Well, tell me a little bit about and of course this whole thing with Dow and these mergers and acquisitions that are taking place in multiple industries now, where bigger companies are now morphing into smaller but more nimble organizations. Tell me where you see the intersection of M&A and strategic planning in this industry for buyers, specifically in the design industry.
For the design industry specifically, as a buyer, your goal as a firm owner or principal is always to grow the value of your firm. You develop your talent and you make an impact on your community in whatever way or function that is, whether you're an architect or an engineer. And so M&A strategy for buyers opens up an increased growth curve trajectory for buyers, really. You see inorganic growth immediately. It diversifies your risk. You can expand your market presence, your services, your competencies. It's going to increase your firm value much and above any kind of organic growth strategy. We've seen that time and time again as we're working with folks that their projections before and after an M&A strategy, the M&A strategy is just a multiplier for them. It's a great add to their strategic plan. And finally, you can also potentially eliminate competition. And so that kind of fits in with buyers. There's a lot of, intersection there as far as sellers go as well. But for buyers, that's kind of where I see, the intersection of M&A and strategy for them.
Okay. So your process, why don't you tell me just a little bit about the M&A process here at Zweig? I mean, obviously I'm familiar with it, but why don't you let the audience know, just a little bit of the ins and outs of how you go about doing what you do. And I know there's a lot of similarities from with regard to M&A and recruiting, which is my area of expertise. And so I know there's a lot of research involved, a lot of sourcing involved, a lot of phone calls. I mean, you guys spend your time on the phone all day long, just like we do in the recruiting group. And so give me just a quick snapshot of what a day is like for Phil and for what you're doing from an M&A perspective.
Sure thing. So when we go about taking on a new client, whether it's a buyer or seller, what we really want to understand is your culture and what you're looking for in a transaction. What are your motivations for selling? What are your motivations for buying? And really get an idea of who would be the perfect fit for you strategically. So from a buying perspective, who is that firm? Are you trying to get to Denver? Are you trying to get to a new market? that you've never been before, and what firm fits in with your culture in order to allow an easy integration process and really expand your value proposition out there in the new market that you're going after. So we spend a day, we fly out and meet in person. We find this is the best way to get a pulse on what your organization is like in the fastest time period.
Right.
And so we spend an entire day just talking through the process that we plan to do, but we learn a lot. We listen a lot to what's going on in your organization and what you want to do and what your goals are.
So you mean just looking at somebody's website is not enough. You've really got to go out and see the firm and touch them and kind of figure out what they're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the listeners here will know that many times your website isn't updated.
Yeah, that's
and
an understatement.
So, I've run into situations where it's been 2005 since they've touched their website.
Yeah.
And a lot of things have changed in, the 17 or the 12 years since 2005.
Right.
And it may not reflect exactly what you're doing. It may not reflect all the changes you've made in the meantime. So it's definitely not enough to get a good idea. And I'd encourage people on the other side. So if we bring a lot of potential buyers and sellers to our clients, and sometimes they reject them straight off of their website, and they haven't really had a chance to have a conversation. I'd encourage folks, a short conversation with the firm is much more valuable to getting to a go, no go type decision on the firm than just taking a look at a website and saying, I don't think it fits with what I'm thinking.
Man, you are preaching to me, because simply, I'm always telling clients from a recruiting perspective, is that, when you can't judge a resume by its cover. Mm-hmm. And just like you can't judge a company by its website. Yeah, I know some companies are just really behind the eight ball when it comes to technology and when it comes to branding themselves properly, which is why it is so important that as consultants, we get out and physically meet the clients that we're working with so we understand. I liken it to the idea that if I was a car salesman, I could never sell a car that I don't test drive.
Right.
And that's the idea. And so clients always, I know clients are trying to save money here or there. And it's like, well, can't we do a video conference? Can that work? And it's like, yeah, you just don't understand. If you're in a position where you ultimately want to sell your firm, and you want to hire someone like Zweig or anybody for that matter, they've got to be able to adequately sell your firm. And they can't do that without understanding your firm. And I always think that the eye test, that the actual physical interaction with meeting your people, meeting your key leadership, and kind of figuring out what you guys are all about is tantamount to success that you're gonna desire to see happen from an M&A perspective. And so without that, you're kind of, you're at a disadvantage, I think.
Right. We're all busy,
right?
But I want your success just as much as you do.
Yeah.
It reflects better on us as Zweig as well as your firm. You want your people to be taken care of going up and thinking long-term strategy. If you're a seller, you're trying to access opportunities for your second-tier leadership, your staff to grow and develop, and access to increased resources. And so any kind of successful transaction there really requires the consultant that you bring on board to really understand what your goals are and what your culture is and how you operate on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And the fastest way to do that is really eye-to-eye, physical, in-person meetings. I'm a millennial and I love technology. I'm huge proponent of technology, but sometimes that just can't replace a face-to-face, all those nonverbal clues and subtle things that you can pick up
exactly
from an in-person meeting.
Yeah, like all the winking and nodding and everything that happens. So talk a little bit about, and I know this is something that we see where you've got these owners that maybe hold on to their company for too long, and by the time they want to transition out, they're just not in a good position to do that, whether because of the loss of great talent or just the desire of the individual to kind of carry on. How do you deal with that, with people that come to you and they're, close to 65 or 70 in years of age? And we have a lot of people like that, a lot of owners in the design industry space across this country that are in these positions, and they're actually very unenviable because they never thought about what the future would be like. They never planned properly to position themselves for acquisition at some point in time. Because if you don't have a succession plan with your own internal organization, you've got to make yourself attractive to somebody else that may want to buy, or else, especially if you're a single owner, how do you cash out? And,
there's always those firms looking for deals.
Right.
They're looking for that fixer upper.
Yeah.
But that's not the situation you want to put yourself in as the owner of the selling firm. And I've got a couple clients at the current moment that I think are, upper 70s that have at least one principal or one owner that's really up there at getting close to retirement and should have retired probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But an interesting situation came about with the recession of 2008, where a lot of firm owners put off any kind of retirement or succession planning. And like you said previously, a lot of them just never thought of it in the first place. So it creates a situation where the second tier leadership, a lot of that left the industry or moved on to another firm that could provide them other resources. So we come to this interesting situation where there's not really anybody to take over on that second tier level, and then you're in a position where you need to sell your firm. And so really putting in place all of those good business practices to begin with, having clean and audited financials and contracts in place with all of your employees, as well as suppliers and any kind of subcontractors that you use. That kind of stuff positions you in a way that makes you attractive and valuable to a potential buyer.
Right. Okay. Well, and so tell me this, and I know this happens a lot because, as recruiters, we call people out of the blue all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm a firm owner, in the design industry, whether it's an architectural engineering firm, take your pick, it doesn't really matter. And I get a call from a firm that's interested in acquiring my company. How do I prepare for that? How do I react to that? Should I just be like, I'm not for sale, even if in the back of my mind I'm thinking, well, maybe I could sell if the price was right, because everybody has a price, right? But I mean, how does a firm prepare for that call? Because you guys are on the opposite end of that phone call, where you reach out to firms a lot of times and say, look, I have an opportunity that you may want to consider. But I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, again, I get it from people, and it's just that I call to recruit, and I'm literally calling them out of the blue. And these are people that aren't actively looking. They're kind of perfectly happy where they are. But, you may potentially present them with such a great opportunity that it's almost impossible to pass up. But how does a firm prepare themselves for that?
Sure. Yeah. I hear it all the time. And, people will jokingly say that, well, if the price is right, it's, I'm open to anything, but I'm not really looking.
Right.
Well, yeah, we're not looking a lot of times when the opportunity strikes upon us. And if you're doing things the right way, there are going to be people looking for your business.
Right.
And so if you get a call out of the blue, you should really entertain it. I mean, a 15-minute phone call is all we're asking the first time around. And an outright rejection, you may be passing up an opportunity that is a perfect fit for your firm. Maybe there's something you've been trying to do for years and years and years, and this will allow you to reach that potential. And, you just reject the phone call offhand, when 15 minutes you may have found something that really fits with your strategic goal. So whether it's an internal or external transition, we're talking specifically external at this point, you can really reduce maybe the pressure and leverage of your owners, or increase the opportunities for your staff to grow and develop. And the good news is, like I said before, all the things that you do to get prepared to sell your firm are good business practices anyway.
Right.
So in preparation for that, for a call, I mean, you want clean, up-to-date, and preferably audited financial statements going back at least 3 years, but 3 to 5 is kind of a generally accepted practice there. And you'll want contracts in place with customers, employees, and suppliers, like I said before, and understand what your possible motivations for selling might be. You'll want to prepare a strategic plan, including expected future revenue. So the higher the backlog, the better is kind of the name of the game here. You want to show a potential buyer that you have up and coming opportunities. You don't just have, this is something that we hear a lot is, I've got repeat clientele. All of my contracts are repeat clients. And so that's what our competitive advantage is.
Okay.
What people don't focus on enough, it seems, in this industry is kind of marketing and going out and getting new business.
Yeah.
And so what happens, and I've seen this a few different times, is, your revenues start dropping off after 5, 10, 15 years because you're not going out and getting new work. You're just relying on repeat clients. And part of that growth and driving value for your firm is to continually go out there and seek new opportunities. And so when someone comes to you, 15-minute phone conversation for potential new opportunity is definitely worth entertaining.
Okay.
So you want to look at SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to your business to kind of have a good idea of where you fit. And something we talked about earlier was succession plans for employees and management. Just kind of get an idea of where you guys want to be in the future. Understand what your valuation could possibly be. There's a lot of different methods available to do this. We suggest looking at net service revenue here at Zweig Group. That's gross revenue minus subconsultants and reimbursables. Your value usually will fall into the 60 to 90% of that number range. But each transaction is different. There's a lot of different factors to look at there when you're going into that. So really kind of to sum everything up, you want to prepare any documentation that shows that you've got a good reputation, you've got repeat clientele and a good relationship with those clients, and something that shows continuing value going forward. So think of it from a buyer's perspective. What would you want to see to make a good first impression if you were to go out and buy a firm?
Right.
This allows you to position your business for the highest value and to be the most successful transaction.
Okay.
Eventually.
Well, you mentioned a lot of things. One thing that does come to mind, because I'm acutely aware of this, is that the importance of buy-sell agreements with ownership. So say I'm a partnership with, or say it's, me and 3 other guys that we all own an architectural firm. Talk about the challenges if you don't have a strong buy-sell agreement in place. If we're all equal shareholders and maybe a couple of us want to cash out, but the others don't, and there seems to be, an acrimonious debate about that. I mean, what problems come up in that type of situation that a good buy-sell agreement can solve? Because that's part of what I think you're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. We run into situations where there's one owner that wants to hold out and you don't have a good buy-sell agreement in place. And so it makes it a very difficult proposition. And so what kind of the ramifications of that when you're looking to sell is you're running around trying to get these contracts in place. You're trying to get the buy-sell agreement. You're having this infighting. And so you're not presenting yourself as a unified, positive front to potential buyer.
Right.
So it sends up red flags. It sends up red flags for them. They might get scared off. You might decrease the value eventually of your firm because your clients start noticing other people in your firm. You want to be open and as authentic as possible with your employees as a principal or an owner. But with M&A, it's a little delicate, and you don't want people to know about it until it's the right time, until you've had something more substantive come across your desk and say, yes, we're moving forward with this firm, and we can show a strategy, and this is why we're going with this firm, and we can really get the employees on board. And that's a big part of the success for an M&A transaction, is as far as the integration standpoint goes, is to get leadership on both sides, the buyer and the seller of the firm, to really communicate enthusiastically about new potentials.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking, and I know you guys field a lot of calls from people that reach out to Zweig to find out more about M&A work and what can we do for them. What do you recommend in terms of is there some type of readiness program that you guys are able to do for a firm to just kind of take a look at what their situation is and give advice? Or when most of the times when you're fielding calls from interested people that are thinking about wanting to put themselves out there either for acquisition or for sale, how much time does it take for you to kind of assess what they're all about?
Zweig Group to assess, or for
Zweig Group, yeah.
It doesn't take long normally for us. We've got a pretty good process in place. The big problem that we run into, and what usually holds up the time is, this isn't something that a firm has thought about for a long period of time, and they just don't have the infrastructure in place to handle the transaction. So it's a lot of trying to get firms that are looking to sell up to date with their financials, understanding their financials, and what that means as an implication for selling their firm. So kind of the process, we do a Principals Academy, we do several seminars as the Zweig Group that can kind of give you an understanding of basic accounting principles and kind of what can you do to position your firm for the most value. And so we collect financial information, we collect any kind of buy-sell agreements, and do interviews with the principals to figure out, what is their value, and we can understand who they are as a firm.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that certainly is great advice and very helpful. And as we close out here, are you bullish on M&As in the design industry in 2017? What is your initial thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 2017, we're going to see a huge increase in activity for M&A as the smaller firms continue to consolidate and move into larger organizations. We've seen explosive growth, and there's a lot of, we don't want to get too political, but the newly elected president has huge plans for infrastructure spending. And as that happens, I think the environment will be primed and ready for a lot of these M&A transactions to take place.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. So tell us just a little bit. We want to learn a little bit more about Phil. You have shared your vast knowledge in the M&A space, but I we do this thing, and normally, obviously, when I do a lot of these interviews, I'm interviewing heads of companies and things of that nature for this Zweig Letter interview series. When we do internally, I haven't really done this, so this will be the first time, but I'd like to know, okay, because inquiring minds want to know, to learn a little bit more about the consultant Phil. And why don't you tell me, what was the last book that you read?
The last book that I read, I'm in the middle of several different books currently. But I just reread It Starts With Why by Simon Sinek, which is one of my all-time favorites. My man. Yeah. And he's got an interesting, so what kind of spurred that along is he's got an interesting, if you look out on Facebook, I don't know who did the original interview, but he's talking about millennials and what the problem is with millennials. It's about a 15-minute conversation that I would encourage you to go out and
You're talking about that video, right?
Right.
The video is amazing. I mean, he really breaks it down.
He breaks it down and really identifies what a lot of the problems that you see with the millennial generation, which has been talked about ad nauseum. And I almost get, as a millennial myself, I almost get frustrated with a lot of what I see. But I think he does a good job there. So I saw that and decided to take one more reread through It Starts With Why.
It's a good book.
It's a really good book. Yeah. I'm also reading a lot on neuroplasticity and neuroscience, several books by Norman Doidge. Okay. So that's really interesting, especially if you approach it from a leadership standpoint and understanding motivations and how your brain changes and adapts itself. Right. Can really give you some pretty good insight. There's so many books I could recommend.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I was just curious to get the last book you read. And speaking of the whole Simon Sinek and millennial thing, since you mentioned it, do you think that, and I want to thank you first for your service to this country by serving in the military. Do you think your time in the military helped you overcome some of the obstacles that some of your peer millennials may not have been able to overcome?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really an opportunity to refocus myself. I loosely had a plan coming out of high school.
Right. Don't we all?
I got it into a couple colleges, and my priorities weren't in the right place. Mm-hmm. And I was able to take that time to reflect, refocus, and gain some really good experience at the same time in learning how, logistics, the structure of an organization, and really how to operate in a large team environment. And so I think that definitely gave me a leg up on a lot of millennials. It may have put off my education a little longer, but in the end, I think I'm much more well-rounded. I'm a much better individual and leader because of it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Again, thank you so much just for your service to this country. Where did you go on your last vacation?
Last vacation? Well, for the holidays, I went down to Houston, so not too exciting.
Did you go out of the country though recently?
I did.
Okay,
I did. So the
right.
last big trip was to India.
Okay. All right.
My fiance is from India.
Great.
And so we went over there for a wedding and spent about 2 weeks over there, and got to travel all over the place. Went to Hyderabad, which is a really interesting city. I know there's a lot of firms out there that have a presence in Hyderabad because it's a huge tech center there in India.
Right.
Went to Delhi, which is the capital there, and got to see the Taj Mahal, and it's just a really great experience and really interesting to see. I understood poverty, but the level of poverty that you see is just abject poverty over there. But at the same time, you've got these entrepreneurs and these guys that are going out and coming out with these amazing things. Yeah. And it's really interesting to watch and take that perspective, going forward.
Well, that's interesting. Congratulations. Well, that's for any of the ladies listening on the podcast. That's too bad. Phil's no longer going to be available. I believe your wedding's coming up in a few months. So
it is May 28th.
Yeah. Congratulations to that. Welcome. I'll be welcoming you to the club very soon. So
thank you.
We'll have a special seat laid out for you. If you could binge watch one TV series, old or new, what would it be?
So the one that I just recently binge watched is Travelers, is what it's called.
Okay.
And I believe it was on Netflix.
Okay.
Interesting premise to the show where it's time travel type thing, and me having a physics background and all things nerdy as far as that standpoint goes. It was an interesting take on time travel where these guys from the future took over the consciousness of someone that they have on historical record seconds before they die, or they're supposed to die, and so it goes through this entire events leading up to that. So I just thought that was an interesting show from the perspective of time travel, the physics behind time travel, and how consciousness may be affected. So.
Interesting, yeah. I there's another time travel show on NBC called Timeless, which I've been watching recently, and I'm a period guy. I was a history major in college, so anything to do with history, I really get excited about. So that's the one show that I'm able to actually watch during the week, and so we've kind of, my wife and I have caught up now. So we're waiting for the next new episode. So we'll see what happens. Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, Phil, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing just a little bit about your experience here, and we're so glad and honored to have you on our team. And folks, if you need anything on the M&A side or strategic planning side, and you just want to talk to a friendly voice on the other side of the phone that can give you some ideas and some guidance and just some things to think about, Phil is definitely your man. And you can reach him here at Zweig Group, and certainly all of our information is available online at zweiggroup.com. I want to thank everybody, and just as a reminder to all Zweig Group media programs like this one are available both on podcast and in some instances also in video format, free for download on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, just to name a few places. You can find us on most of these online portals. We'd like to thank you for watching, or rather for listening to the podcast, by offering you a free copy of the Zweig Letter. Just visit TZL, that's freeTZL.zweiggroup.com. A link to all of this information will be in our show notes. And we would love it if you would share this link with a friend. Tell somebody about the Zweig Group podcast. We have got Zweig Group Media has a ton of great new things coming out in 2017. And, like this interview that I just did with Phil, we've got a lot of good stuff happening. So we'd certainly love for you to avail yourselves of that information and material. Listen, folks, I'm Randy Wilburn, and you've been listening to Zweig Group Media, part of Zweig Group. Remember, we exist to make you more successful. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this Zweig Letter podcast. We hope that you can apply the Zweig team's no-holds-barred advice to your daily professional life. For a free 6-week subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit freeTZL.zweiggroup.com to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.